This evening is the First Lady of Opera and one of the most distinguished names in the international world of music, Miss Leontine Price. Leontine, this is the fulfillment of a long-awaited event, and let me extend to you a most generous and warm welcome on behalf of the live audience and also our radio audience. And I want to start out by commenting that you are probably the most honored artist of our time. You have been honored by presidents, governments, universities, opera companies, the recording industry, and your peers. And I've always wondered which award has meant the most to you and why?
That's a very difficult question, Bill. I think they all are important in their own way, in distinctive ways. I have to admit, though, that I think the Freedom Medal was a very important one in my life for many, many poignant reasons, not only because the late President Lyndon Johnson was a very special gentleman, I think, in my life in many ways, but I think one's representation of any type of achievement to be honored by your own country is I think, as they say in the vernacular, super. Last season, I think to be honored by your peers, which was the occasion of the Kennedy Honor Awards last year, was to me a very heady experience because one, I think that is the most distinctively difficult judgment to fulfill this type of shall we say, respect or rather recognition from those who shall we say toil in the same field that you do, and all of the creative art forms. That was a very auspicious occasion for me, and one that I hope always to be able to earn, especially being in such extraordinary distinguished company as Maestro Leonard Bernstein and Agnes DeMille and then Fontaine and James Cagney. Most heady experience for me.
And the other part of the your peers in the recording industry, I don't know how many Grammys you've won by now, Leontine, but it seems like only one, your records, I thought.
I was about to tell you, excuse me, I'm very chauvinistic about my Grammys. This past year was my 16th, I'm proud to say, yes.
And how many doctorates do you have by now?
Oh, that's difficult to say. This season also was a very heady experience because all of the biggies, I would say, Columbia, Yale, and Harvard so far have given me this past summer, I guess it was spring, was a degree from Harvard. So I feel I'm not only hopefully well honored, but also a bit Ivy League even now. Thank you.
Since I count Harvard and Yale among my universities, I'm glad that we're in the same company. Yeah. Leontine, many people have wanted to ask you, at the beginning of your career, how difficult was it? Because you started at the top of the opera field without ever singing small roles or singing in small houses. How difficult was it to do what you did at that time? Or do you recall it being difficult or being under any pressure?
I'm under pressure right now, Bill. I don't know. I don't think I could. Life without pressure for me would be something rather strange, I think, to be a bit jovial. I would not say the word top is a rather interesting way to put it. I think it's totally accurate. I think that as a young aspiring lyric that I was always in the right place at the right time, which I think is something very good for budding careers. I think that the most wonderful thing about it was that I was recognized as a potential artist by my own country. That's what made it seem as if it was all, glory and light at the beginning. And that has been a very strong part of my roots to build on. In other words, I was not exotica to my own personal native ambiance. My first performances were in the company, too, not only in the United States, but particularly in Europe later, with the most extraordinary artists. So I learned and performed and became a professional at the same time. It is a great, strenuous voyage and pressure beyond belief. But then what is life without a challenge? Sometimes I think pressure is a challenge, and it keeps you very vibrant and very alive.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I overlooked a question that is connected with the many awards you have received. Being in this very honored position, Leontine, are you aware of the pressures and responsibilities that go with your position? And I think you are in a very distinct and very unique position. And again, people always wonder, I mean, it must be a terrible responsibility to be what Leontine Price represents. Is this something you're aware of?
At the risk of sounding a bit old-fashioned, which I think I am, and that's rather refreshing in some of today's palpitations, I'm very humble before this. For instance, I feel particularly this season, Monday evening was the beginning of my 30th season as a professional performer. And to be able to still perform at, I think, hopefully the standard that I would like to perform, and to have a reaction from the public, I think, realizing that I still burn the midnight oil and try to do my best at this particular very mature stage in my career is very rewarding to me. It is very heady because I never take each performance that goes now. There's with it's like freedom. With freedom, there's not that is not the time for you to be lax or to be careless or to be unfeeling or to be insensitive. It's the poignant time for you to be the most responsible, the most aware of everything. It's with everything, things that are good bring with them things that go for making life the best of its substance. And I think for a musician or any creative art, I'm sure that any of us who are in, as you say, quote, unquote, certain positions, I think there are tremendous responsibilities that go with it, which continually brings out, if you are not content to, shall we say, yawn through your last laurel, so to speak, it does keep you very, very aware that that there's a tremendous amount of responsibility with it. And in my case, I still unabashedly say that I speak for many more than myself. Always I speak, I think, vocally as an American, which is a very stimulating experience for me, particularly when I'm in other areas, like Europe or the Middle East, or where I feel first and foremost very responsible as an American to do the very best I can. And then added to that also is a very tender, very sentimental, and very still challenging responsibility to be the best I can as myself, which incidentally sometimes is, I think, it's as an ex-token black in a very creative art form, it is wonderful to still keep that feeling that you have something else to say every time you go out, something positive, I mean, which is wonderful, I think, about our country, is the embryonic, shall we say, the debuts of important matters. It's in law, it's in science, it is with a woman judge on the Supreme Court just now, and reasonably soon it is such a marvelous, intricate part of our culture as if it were never not that way in the beginning. And that's the way I feel. As our country is stimulating in growth and always moving, I feel that way about careers. I feel that way about myself as a performer.
This is probably why, in many ways, you have received the awards you have received. For two music accept. You once described your voice as a juicy lyric. And I wondered if you still say that, because I always like to think of you as a dramatic soprano.
That is a great compliment, Bill, in that means that there has been some growth vocally, which falls very well on your very knowing ears. But to this date, I am a lyric soprano. I will always be a lyric soprano. I am very acquainted with the type of vocal cords that I have. It's a very personal relationship between the two of us. It's, when there were limited times that I took them beyond their means, I was still young enough to recover from that. And I really believe that I am a lyric soprano. I think if I had not really understood what I'm saying about that, I probably would not be performing as well today. It still is very difficult to resist many challenges which would not necessarily be taxing at this particular time in my career, but foolhardy, I think, because if it would go, I might be stuck with it to do as a steady diet, and it may not be good. If it didn't go, nothing matters anyway when things don't go. Everybody loves a winner, you know. Liza's wonderful theme song. I am a lyric soprano, and I feel I have dramatic tendencies on call, but I am basically a lyric soprano, yes.
As many people in this audience know, we have often commented that the secret of a lengthy career is knowing when to say no. And obviously you learned early in your career, because I know you've had offers to do many things that you could have done if you wanted to be very ambitious. And as you say, maybe your excellent vocal longevity is because you know the word no.
I think I've disturbed a great many people because they don't think I have yes in my vocabulary. But that is not entirely true. Contrary to opinions, I have no personal vendettas towards any particular ambiances. I love what I do, but I really also think that success is a luxury not only for the public, but I rather think that it's a luxury for the people involved. I think I've done many things by dividing my career into other areas that had to do with my own personal growth as well. I don't know why the audience should have all the fun and I don't. It was as simplistic as that. I cannot express to you at this very mature stage of my career and to be as excited, I mean really, as they say, like a racehorse, to go on the stage of the Metropolitan this year to do a role that I began in the 61 and only did. It's indescribable. I feel young about it. I feel anticipatory about it. I feel also that I will hopefully be in, I think, at this particular point in my life, the best voice that I've been in. And to make a full circle and to present this, I think, a seasoned product at the place that I began, which is the reason that I was accepted in my own ambiance. It is a thrill of a lifetime I cannot possibly describe to you. I have no idea if it's shared by anyone, but I cannot wait to get there.
Well, I have to tell Leontine something. We were talking about the book Opera on Record, and I'm going to read something from that book later on. But recently, as you know, she recorded Il Trovatore for the third time, and we will be giving that away this evening. When it was reviewed in the gramophone, they talked about the fact that she had recorded it for the third time, and they said, we wish she had given us something she hadn't done before, and they made one or two comments, and then they said, but when all is said and done, who today can sing Leonora's music the way Leontine Price can? That's the bottom line, Leontine.
You're very kind because I feel very close to the part of Leonora, not only because it was my very important debut in what I call the Metropolitan, the Holy Temple, which I think it is. It's very tender to me because not only that, as recently as 1977, I returned to the spot where I first did it in Europe, which was the Salzburg Festival, and that's nothing more exciting than being in competition with yourself, because it makes you find out what you're really all about. because if your standards were of a certain quality to begin with, and you can continue it and have it back to back in an area where things may not necessarily go so well, it has a positive effect on what comes later. It means that you did something right about your career. It means that you certainly took extraordinarily good care of your vocal apparatus, and that you might be of some worth for a little longer. You know, it's a wonderful experience. Leonora, for me, as a matter of fact, I find in many senses more enjoyable than the role that everyone seems to think that perhaps is the obvious choice I should have, and that's Aida. I love Aida. She was my warrior part. She was parallel not only vocally with certain emotional palpitations that I had, but she was my mode of expressing my own way of a positive breaking of the tradition. And through her, because she gave no problems with a total outline of what I had to say at a time that the focus for Americana in a progressive area in this particular creative art form, and since I was on the spot to sort of express this, she was perfect for what I had to say. And also, I think it's the one time that the obvious is it's totally positive. I tell that to youngsters today, particularly the young black inspiring opera singers. Aida is a must if you think that your vocal apparatus can handle it, because it's rather like certain other things. It's always your trump card. It's something that can always make a personal. It can make a way. It can make a way. In many cases, rather like Bess did, and still is a proving ground and a stepping stone. And then after that, your individuality, not only in that part, but in whatever you do afterwards, can have even more of a contrast. I found that because Leonora was offered to me even before, and long series of Aida, and I'm very proud of that because she's a very special part, not only because of my debut, but because I think she has an expression of a certain quality of me as a personality that I like a great deal.
I've told Leontine that I think I had the first press book that her manager ever put out on her, and I was doing my research for this interview, and I want her to tell a story of how Herbert von Karajan discovered her, because I hadn't heard that before. You auditioned for him without you even knowing it, and I want you to tell Leontine what influence has he had on your career, because I think he has played a big part.
Yes, but that is true. That's why it goes into a wonderful circle. First, I was brought by the hand by Andre Mertens, who was at that time the president of Columbia Artists, and his assistant is still my my personal director at Columbia Artists, Nellie Walter. It was the first time that the Verdi Philharmonic had been brought to New York. And this is very interesting because this process is still going on now. A lovely young artist is having the same opportunity through this same channel. Columbia Artists with Ronald Wilford at this time. Her name is Barbara Hendricks, and they are, and with Maestro Levin, who has carried lovely Kathleen Battle. These things happen still, and it's very exciting. I was taken as a young artist, bridging the gap from Porgy and Bess by this wonderful man, Andre Mertens, to Herbert von Karajan in Carnegie Hall, where the auditions are still held for promising artists, and to audition. He got up from the audience, came to the stage, waved the pianist away, started to play the accompaniment for the aria, and the chemistry began immediately. It was like one whole line, and immediately he invited me to that was the focus. His importance in my life is the focus of the responsible for the international focus of the career. And in that way, I learned with artists under his baton in Wien, at the Staatsoper, in the Berlin, in La Scala, as a matter of fact, with artists like Giulietta Simeonato. My first butterfly was with Giuseppe Di Stefano. It was my first Turandot, as Liu was with Birgit Nielsen, whom I'd never met before. These were thrilling experiences. When I came to the Metropolitan, I had so many roles under my belt, so much wonderful advice, not only from him, also a vocal way of singing that was very apropos to my own wonderful, beloved teacher, Florence Page Kimball, who also always said, please remember to sing on your interest, not your capital. His approach is the same. With these wonderful experiences, I was able, as is very evident now, to not only to be accepted in America, but to be accepted as an American artist in a European ambiance. And not only that, we have extremely good friends.
I was going to say the relationship has lasted over the years.
Yes, it was, a matter of fact, it was he in 1977 who had this idea. At 50, I was, yes, to do Leonore and Trovatore again in the same stage, on the same spot. And that was a challenge because, as I said, it was wonderful to be in competition with yourself and win, because it would have been catastrophe if I'd lost.
Well, this is true because I asked Angel Records, I said, why did you have Leontine record Trovatore again? And they said, well, we wanted anything by Leontine Price in our catalog. And they said Herbert von Karajan asked for her personally. So they said it's a new story. That's how it came about.
That was very, very, very tender moment because I think it's wonderful to do things and to leave them intact. I would hate to have to leave something to pass on, or some type of a standard to pass on, as it was passed on to me very much intact, by dear beloved Marian Anderson. I'd like to think that I had a standard and that I had everything, shall we say, done. I'm like my dear friend Beverly Sills. I like neatness as well. That everything is, polished and tied up in a very neat bundle to pass on in excellent condition to who comes after you. Not tattered and torn. That's more or less my only ambition right now. Yes.
Leontine, in the past year, with a variety of people, conductors, etc., we've been talking about the difference between singing Puccini as compared to Verdi.
Yeah.
Now, once you made a statement, which my audience has heard me repeat many, many times, that you said Act Two of any Puccini opera was a killer. And we've had discussions from people who said that for Puccini, all you need is a youthful, healthy, big voice. Whereas for Verdi, you need much more of a technique and solid musicianship. Do you agree?
I said that at the time, and I don't think that I'm the only singer who's made a certain type of, I wouldn't call it a negative appraisal of performing Puccini roles. I think even La Scala said that at one time. Puccini is a very emotional composer. You sing Puccini, I think, personally, with as much emotion as you do voice. He's a realist. I think in that sense, the division of where the emotional and the reality of the hero role ends and the voice meet, that's the greatest challenge in singing Puccini. If you don't get the knack of it, you can get, I think, into great vocal trouble. It is very easy to force in Puccini because you are very involved. Where can you find a more poignant, real story that is apropos to practically any woman in love as Madama Butterfly, as the turmoil of Minnie and Fanciulla? These are very, and the grandiose reality of the part of Tosca. But it is it is the fine line between where the emotion of this composer and your vocal capabilities can meet and not get out of hand. That is the difficulty with Puccini. And that I was saying it may be a vocal killer. And always it's very interesting that the most poignant moments usually that challenge the vocal apparatus to its most ultimate limits are usually in the second act. That I can't explain, but if you test the repertoire, you will find that I am more or less accurate about that. And it is in Mozart and Verdi, for instance, who are more classicists, I would say. Verdi is a very noble composer, particularly in the heroines that my voice is suited to. That there's an introspective and outgoing element in expressing what you do. He writes everything almost there that is within the element of where the voice should go. It's very difficult to get into vocal problems at all with Verdi. It's not to say that he is less emotional, but it's another flavor of emotion which can be handled almost 2/3, if not totally, by the vocal apparatus itself, because he wrote so well, especially for me. Where in Puccini, it is a balance. It is almost an overpowering reality and almost a battle between the emotion and the vocal prowess together, and that's difficult to solve for some artists. It was for me at a time, and better now though. Better. Yeah.
You know, one of your friends and one of mine, and again, she was here, and that's Leona Mitchell, and she said that you were helping
I'm sorry
her.
that I did not mention her as one of the most.
Well, she spoke about you.
Absolutely, first.
And she said that you were helping her with advice on the repertoire. And I want to ask you, how would you advise a soprano like Leona to approach the Verdi roles? Where do you start? Because Leona said that she thought maybe her Aida was 5 years away, but Trovatore would be next year.
I think that in the case of La Mitchell, I think that she is past the neophyte. You see that she is a professional now, and these decisions, I think, are more or less already formed in her mind. I am sort of the, shall we say, the den mother for them, bless them. I never impose my presence on them, but they're very, and my door is open at all times if they want to, to cry, whine, complain, or even be happy about something that's done. I think, and I think I'll be doing this in the very near future, so why don't I start rehearsing today is what I would say to a young artist for Verdi role, for any role in opera, the opera stage. I think from the studio to the stage, let's say from the studio to the wings, before you enter the stage, there are at least 10 dimensions for any characterization in an opera. There are so many things to do before it is absolutely in the professional form for, shall we say, presenting to the general public. I will give it 10 dimensions. And they're not all vocal either.
Leontine Carrion has asked you to help him with the school he's starting in Salzburg this summer, I read. It said he's asked about 10 artists, and your name was mentioned, to help him with the school.
There's a foundation that he has formed that will be judging certain artists for, I think, scholarships for experience, for exposure. I've been asked to be on the staff. I have to find out if really my schedule can allow it. It is, I think, will be very valuable experience, and I'm considering it. I'm not quite sure just yet. Yes, but I will use it as a vehicle, as I will. I think. Soon, I would like to take some courses myself to be sure to be totally up to date at presenting whatever expertise, quote unquote, I may have through experience, exposure, and a certain type of personal know-how, which I guess is expertise, onto young artists very, very shortly. I must say I'm happy to announce that I'm really so busy, fortunately, and very involved in shall we say, the warmth of of the still active career, that is in the near future, but I don't have a date for it yet. I have many offers, and I'll know when I want to do that. I think, getting back to the serious question, the personal relation between you and your voice is like no relation in the world. It behooves you, the first thing to do is to find your sound in your own self. Love it even before you take it to a teacher. Or also to find out the channel through your own expertise, your own natural know-how, before it is channeled by anyone else. You must have very definite ideas from this personal acquaintance with your own sound. And the best thing where there is a certain 6th or 7th sense, shall we say, if this first approach is a personal one with you and your sound. You can discard those things that you really feel that are not important or not expedient for your vocal progress, and to receive like a sponge those things that you think that will grow. That also helps to channel even stronger your own individuality. Singing is the most personal, and that's why it's sort of the most, shall we say, emotionally effective type of performing. It has a human element to it because it's in your body. You take it with you all the time. That's why you have to get acquainted with it so very personally, that there's a personal sense between you and your sound. That it is, I don't mean wrapping it in cotton. I mean a personal relationship between you and your voice that will help you with any teacher, any coach, any exposure that comes later on. You are the only person that will know what to do with it.
And all singers don't have this.
That is, I find, provocative and extremely strange. No one has ever made a decision where my chords will go. They can tell me which plane I can get on. They can tell me which hotel I can stay in, or even give a schedule. But I have never allowed, once or twice that I did, it was wrong, to be choreographed into putting my chords, which I am the only person that can operate, any place that I think it should not go. That's the personal relationship I mean. That doesn't go down very well with opera managers sometimes. And then if it goes, it's fine. If it doesn't, you are left with the responsibility of the fiasco. Nobody wants any part of it then, because they say, well, I mean, you made the decision, and they're right. I would think youngsters always spend as much time as possible getting in touch with your own instrument, and then you will know how it will grow. This sounds very encouraging for Leona, because that means that if there's a thought process going in, and the one thing about to really be the kickoff item this year, I'm thrilled beyond belief, really.
Leontine, what for you makes a good conductor? I mean, never mind that he's a nice guy and you're friendly, but...
No, I think maybe the less is very nice. No, I'm strike that, Robert. No, I like... I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you... What makes a good conductor?
What is it that you would like from your partner on the podium there?
I guess my weakest... I really do like what we call tight ships. I like a perfectionist, you know. I don't like to get away with anything. I think that's my basic palpitation for a great conductor. I like the challenge of knowing I've really got to move even farther than I thought I could go. And that's my sort of palpitation about conductor-itis. I like that feeling that they can be, you know, to me that is the total complete ego. They're the ones that they are such egomaniacs that they even take this tender loving care with the poor little old soprano and make you think that you really can do better than you can, and most of the time you do. I guess the only way I can describe it is I like perfectionists.
But that runs completely counter to the image we have of the prima donna coming in swooping her skirts behind her and knocking down all the stands and telling her, this is how I want to do it, Maestro.
Hate it, Robert. Hate it. You never grow that way. I like it. And I think more or less that's why I never have any trouble with conductors. Because I never walk into a room with what we call congealed ideas of anything that I've done before I am faced with that particular maestro. I never do, because maybe that's my own ego. I'd like to find out exactly if I can move someplace else with this tempo I never question it. And usually come out of those experiences with something much more than I went in. And I feel terrific about myself because I say, hey, wow, I could really do that. I didn't know I could do that staccato or da staccato or what that. In that particular, it's a challenge. I like it. It's very vibrant. I just like perfection. They can be mean. The tougher the better. I like. I don't think really nice guys really make the greatest conductors. Do you? No.
For the aria, perhaps we'd better leave the conductor anonymous. You said earlier that one of the things you want to do with a conductor is grow. You said you can't grow if you come in and tell a maestro how to do it.
No, who wants to find you excited? First place, especially when you have the privilege of singing with great orchestras, which are already tight ships, which I like. And so that means that you already, in some ways, if your ego is if you're not into your own ego, that's where you can feel terrific about yourself. You wouldn't have been asked in the first place for this particular, to participate in that ambiance if they didn't think you had something to offer. So why march in grandstanding? You've already had the grandstanding by the invitation. You see.
No, but I want to ask you about something in a way that goes deeper.
What?
When you said that you don't want to do it this way because you would not grow, this is a very, I think, important statement from an artist who would seem to have nowhere to grow to. I mean, really, how much better are you going to get?
Robert, I do very kind. I really love you for it. You don't know how much I appreciate that at this particular stage of my life. Beginning with like last season, I mean, I was so excited because some of the efforts that I put in, I think, were evident, and at this particular stage in my life, that's a very exciting thing. And to begin another season like this, it keeps me young, it keeps me alive. I think there's always room for improvement, not only vocally, I think, as human beings, And so you can learn, objectivity doesn't come from you. I mean, in the same sense as it can from someone else, you see.
Yeah. So that you want to learn and to feel a growth in all sides of you.
In every side of me. Yeah, in all sides of me, I think that makes the complete, it's very good for an artist, I think, It keeps you, it's certainly, in performances, you feel that you're much more vibrant, I think, because you sort of tapped another little source there that you didn't know was closed. And age has nothing to do with it.
Well, of course. Leontine, you have worked for many years also with David Garvey, the pianist. Do you find the same sort of relationship that you were describing with Zubin Mehta before, the same kind of partnership in learning and in growing?
That is right. For instance, in my performances with David now, he is an extraordinary, the literature that he has alone in his whole being is extraordinary. But our vibrations, you see, also the camaraderie between a singer and a conductor. Why in the world would great conductors really, get too involved with singers? I think we're the last on the totem pole for probably respect and a lot of things, because our gift is so personal. They have to adhere a whole ambiance around, a pair of vocal cords. So the best way you can gain their respect immediately is to be as professional as possible, as concert masters that they have at the to be the focal point. I think singers can do it. Their list is pretty long. I think singers can really be that professional. It's the same way with David. You're also on the same wavelength. You can tell immediately the chemistry is the same. The greatest thing in the world can happen for a singer is to be on the same wavelength with a conductor. Mm-hmm. They can do wonders for you. You can do wonders for them. It's something like it's chemistry. It's the pores.
And so when you work with David, the idea is to build one interpretation, not to say this is the way I do it.
No, we grow. For instance, we can find something in the program that we've been doing for a year now. There are still elements at the end of last season. There would be something we would, come off and hug each other, and they would, that it's a phrase, or it can be a whole group that has an aura to it that took such a long time to get. It from the piano to the voice. How about the main thing I think about artistry is a oneness. If it's with a great conductor or with an artist like my friend David God, is to feel this it's like a great, wonderful tapestry, that you can't, there are no seams. It all goes together and merges,
And what lies ahead for you this season? Are you going to be busy?
I'm going to attempt another very busy season, Robert. Why not? When I finish the performance with the Philharmonic and Maestro Mater, then I go out for a few performances across the Midwest with orchestras and in recital with David Garvey. And then after that...
Excuse me, our broadcast now is being heard on stations through the country, so if you have any
How
specific
wonderful.
places or dates, you
I'll
can
be
drop
in
them.
Omaha, I'll be in Knoxville, Tennessee, I will be in New Mexico. I will, after that, return to San Francisco. I will do the part of the Second Prieur, in which I made my debut in 1957 in Les Dialogues des Carmélites of Francis Poulenc, which is the production that they're doing this year in the fall. So I will be, you know how opera is, it eats up a lot of time, so I'll have Hotel Idas there for a good month. And then one or two more concerts in December, then I'll spend Christmas with my family as usual. And then beginning the first of the year, I will do some performances on the Northwest Coast, which I really enjoy, in Canada, with the Seattle Symphony, with the San Francisco Symphony, with Maestro Derat, and head back towards Boston. In other words, I'll have another recital tour.
Right, so you will be busy. You will.
Yes, I'll be busy again.
Leontine, one thing that you said that struck me, that you were going to repeat a role that you did in 1957, did you say?
That was when I made my debut into opera, grand opera proper, hypertechnically. It was from an invitation from Curada to join the company in 1957. And this is the same role that I did then.
If we could have a tape recording of your performance in 57 and made another one of the one upcoming, aside from the vocal growth, purely vocal, how different interpretively do you think it would be? Do you restudy a part each time, or you sort of pick up where you left before?
You never believe this. The part that I think that has most been associated with me, perhaps besides Leonore and Trovatore, is Aida. I always go and refresh it.
Even now?
Yes, because you can get into bad habits. There's some things that you might be able to, well, from life's experiences in general, can add to being a little more vocally poignant. I found that in Trovatore last season, definitely.
Can you be a little more specific about what you mean by refreshing a score?
Yes.
How do you do it?
You can say, oh, I know that. That attitude. You really may not. I mean, you may know the music, but you might have had a lot of things, particularly in the character itself. You might have done more research. You might have had a more in-depth feeling about how she is as a woman, speaking of the heroines that I do operatically speaking. I think I have much more to bring to the Second Prieur in the Dialogues of the Carmelites than I did at first, because I was a total neophyte then. I sang it well, but now I think as a woman I can relate even more to the dilemma. I don't want to go too far, the dilemma of a nun, but I think I can, to the dilemma and the state of being that this particular order of nuns, and I actually have been doing some more research on this particular order now that I know that I will be doing this.
That's an interesting point as well. Do you
role again?
You would do non-musical research for a part that you're singing?
Doesn't everything I think we all do? Yes. Museums, the religious, political vibrations of the day are very important, I think, for you to know the history of what you're doing.
But sometimes,
Particularly as a Verdian soprano.
Yeah.
This is very important when you're doing something.
except that
Verdi.
the Verdi,
A Verdi composer, I think, no?
but Verdi can sometimes, or his librettist will change history around. If you go know one thing historically.
Not necessarily, Robert, to the point of devastating it. No, I mean, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking. I'm not talking about how he transfers it into his melodrama to fit his various phrases. I'm speaking of really the characters that you're doing, how they were at that time, and for instance, that's one of the reasons that one can be of a certain particular animation in certain roles, and you may not be able to have it in others because of the way, for instance, if you were raised by nuns in a convent, your emotional outbursts must be, they must be certain, the women, the ladies of the day, had a certain way to carry themselves, etc.
Leontine, you have performed music of every conceivable sort. Are there any missing links as you see it? I mean, are there any parts you're dying to do but nobody has asked you, or songs that you just can't find the time to learn, or something like that?
Robert, I really am the culprit in all this. There have not been any roles that were possible for me to do that I have not been invited to do. I've never had this hunger, though, you see, to go from one role to another. I ran the gamut, I think, in all the Verdi heroines that really fitted my instrument. And to take on any that do not, it's
doesn't make sense,
ridiculous,
surely.
isn't it? The area of opera, I think, for me, I have exhausted it to a most, I wouldn't say exhausted, that sounds like one is stagnant. Things that would interest me. There are one or two, but I'm not quite sure if histrionically they are necessarily perfect for me. Vocally, it doesn't present a problem. For instance, case in point, Desdemona, or the Marshal. Vocally, where are the problems? None at all. But at this particular stage, I would like to have as much success en general in something that I would pick up at this particular point as a challenge, as I would with something that would totally fit me. I don't know if I want to take on anything that isn't going to go. In other words, Robert, to be totally public.
For instance, the Desdemona, you feel might be an acting problem as opposed to a singing problem.
I think let's look at the play which you have. There are evidences. And I mean, this may sound totally incongruous with my whole, different stand on being very strong about and really enjoying my blackness and enjoying different things about being who and what I am. But there are limits. I do think that there are certain areas that demand a certain type of consideration. And dramatically, I think that this is my personal opinion, of course, I would defeat myself.
The purpose of the play.
The purpose of the play. And is it really worth it for that? There's so many other things that one can do without that. And I've recorded it. I've enjoyed singing the music, so there's no point in doing something that's not going to work. I like things to work. I like to win.
Price as Desdemona, and we are ready to close out a marvelous visit with the soprano. You've taken us pretty much through Christmas in your plans.
Yes.
All of the elements, the operatic performances, the recitals will continue going. What about recordings? What can we look for? What are you planning, or what have you done that hasn't been put out yet?
Actually, I just did, before this season began, a recording, which I think is very needed with RCA, and Thomas Shepard as the producer, Charles Gerhardt as the arranger and conductor, of patriotic literature, a recording of the Star-Spangled Banner, Robert, a recording of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, America and America the Beautiful, actually a wonderful song by Irving Berlin, which is from the poem On the Statue of Liberty, Give Me Your Tithe, Your Poor. The Negro National Anthem, which is a wonderful poem by James Weldon Johnson, and actually I thought it was actually the national anthem until I left grammar school in Mississippi, lift every voice and sing. It's the gamut of American, not folklore, American patriotic literature. And I think I think I think there's a need for it, and I certainly enjoy doing it.
And I
So
guess
it's a great
this is
challenge.
one instance of where a singer of the Star Spangled Banner didn't have to worry about the high note at the...
As a matter of fact, I put it up a tone because I think B flat is what makes the problem, Robert. I put it up.
and thereafter, any other recording plans?
Thereafter, some in the making, which I'm not at liberty to speak about at this particular point. I never do until the contract is signed, Robert.
I see. Well,
Thank
you're
you
a
very
careful
much.
person,
Absolutely,
right?
but continued recitals, and if something operatic does come up that interests me, I certainly will participate in it.
Let me just ask you one more question. I thought this would be the end, but I can't bear to let you go that easily.
Thank you. I like being wanted.
On your Prima Donna album, Volume 5,
Yes.
there is a piece from Gloriana by
Mhm.
Benjamin Britten.
Fabulous.
And of course, you have the arias of the Antony and Cleopatra, which you premiered.
Yeah.
Do you continue to have an interest in 20th century opera, in new music?
I do. I actually express that interest and love, actually, on all my recitals because our composers are innumerous in their facileness for attending to the vocal apparatus. Not only the great poetry that like the dear Samuel Barber, Ned Rorem, Lee Hoybe, Howard Swanson, you name it. I put them on my recitals. I have not had the opportunity to express myself as much in opera as you know, but I do not do any recitals unless I include a very juicy group of American literature.
Leontine Price, thank you much. You have, I think on one of our previous visits, you spoke of the joy that you take in singing, and you have certainly given us as listeners incredible joy through the years, and for many more years to come, I trust.
Thank you,
So-
Robert. Hopefully you're a joy, and God bless. I loved being here.